Hey everybody, welcome back to Rugby Wrap-Up. Matt McCarthy at Studio 34, the Fantasy Sports Network in the Renaissance Hotel on West 35th Street. Today, we have Mr. Steve Lewis and Mr. Michael Crafton joining us today. And we'll also have Phaidra Knight, who is speeding here in a town car and will join us any second. Gentlemen, Stephen, literally you have a plane to catch.
I do indeed.
And let's just get right to your story because he's got to get out of here. You can stick around a little bit.
Sure.
Where are you going on that plane?
Going to Blaine, Minnesota.
Of course you are. Blaine, Minnesota.
The ultimate vacation spot. Actually, so it's Minneapolis for the Club National Sevens. I'll be there coaching the Bulldogs out of New Haven, Connecticut, against the cream of the crop, the rest of the country.
So you get around coaching these sevens setups, don't you?
Yeah, I like coaching sevens. It's less moving parts to a certain extent. You know, you can dip in, dip out. Less. You don't have the sort of Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday grind of a long 15 season. You get to work probably closer with players. Get to develop them. You get to see that development. So I really enjoy coaching sevens.
Okay, so that's this coming weekend, Blaine, Minnesota.
Correct.
How many connecting
Club
flights do you have?
It's direct flight, but I just got to get there.
All right. Okay. All right. So we'll get you out of here soon. Michael Crafton, what have you been doing rugby-wise since our last on-camera appearance together here?
Doing some work to prepare kind of a Congress response to the wider membership as to expected next steps to see from the national office, the board.
So you mean after the meeting?
After the meeting,
right.
What we as Congress are going to be doing.
What the hell were you doing before the meeting?
Well, we were waiting for responses to come back.
All right,
yeah?
Fair enough. Let's get to that, and we're going to bring Phaidra in a second, Steve, when you have to bolt. But it wasn't all negative. We talked about it, Martin Pengelly and yours truly, on the last show about we said there was basically much ado about nothing, but there were some positives that came out of it, specifically committee-wise. You want to address that? Because I know that you're part of a new committee setup.
Prior to the Congress meeting, and not because of the Congress meeting, a couple of committees were set up. One was the Performance Game Board, which is a new board really to oversee the high performance side of things, so national teams, pathways, top domestic competitions. So that's been empowered, that's been populated. I'm actually the sevens rep on that. Also, a women's advisory committee was formed, and that's long overdue. So those were good things.
So hold on, let's get back to that high performance committee. You're the sevens rep, and do you rep male and female?
Yeah, absolutely.
Players?
So representing all of it, and obviously have a sort of smallish working group underneath me of sort of prominent coaches and administrators.
And how are they selected?
Really by invitation. It's just a matter of trying to get what we're trying to do is address what are the problems in the sevens calendar, and seasonality is the main one. Calendar. It's things like competition, eligibility. How do we get more better rugby, more better sevens? That's my remit.
And I think at a high level, the part of the reason why this committee was created was to acknowledge that there's a difference between high performance rugby, elite rugby, and the rest of community rugby, so to speak. And there was a desire by the more elite clubs to say we want to remove ourselves from the broader discussion of what community rugby is. We have different concerns and issues that are more appropriately addressed by folks that are actually in elite competitions.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Mike. Thanks for reminding me the purpose of it. But some of the other good things came out of Congress was, I think it was a recognition that the board nominating process is a flawed process. So the Congress has accepted, it's the process in place for last meeting, probably the next one. But at least that recognition is there, and there's a small subcommittee we're heading up trying to revamp that, take in the best practices and improve that, because it's definitely has been a problem. In addition, Congress itself has recognized the need for a sort of separate leadership group. And so there are moves afoot to...
In what sense?
Well, to represent Congress. Right now we have a Congress representative to the board who acts as a de facto head of Congress. But there's really no specific congressional leadership.
And who is that currently?
That would be Jeremiah Johnson. Congress really needs to organize itself, and I think that a lot of good progress was made in that regard at this last Congress meeting. Congresses seem to be a little bit more engaged and responding in some respects.
And this speaks to this accountability issue, that there's been a lack of accountability from Congress towards the board and national office an idea that there hasn't been accountability by the board to the previous iteration of the national office. I think things are trending in the right direction now. Part of this Congress structure will be, having a president, a vice president, someone who's going to be focused on finances, someone who's going to be focused on communication, and then an internal secretary. So we can have people within Congress that are going to be our spokespeople to make sure that the Congress as a body is actually looking at the national office, actually looking at the board, and making sure everyone's accountable from our end.
So the two of you were on here the last time, and I asked you to make predictions on whether the two board members up for nomination were going to get ratified. You said yes, pretty clearly, and you said reluctantly you said yes, but the vote was going to be closer. What was the vote?
Yeah, two separate votes.
And before you, I'm sorry, and closer than you being the only one abstaining.
Right. So previous Congress meeting, the vote was 2 abstentions, 1 opposed, and everyone else in favor. So I was that lone dissenter at that time. I didn't change my views. I haven't changed my views. And on current evidence, I'm not going to change my views. However, this time, there were 6 other Congress people who voted with me, as in against renominating Chad Keck, and 2 abstentions. So we went from 1 person in opposition to 9. And I think it's the first time, in fact, ever, there's been any opposition to a board renomination. So that speaks to itself.
I'd agree with your last point. I don't know if it's quite accurate to say you were the only person who voted against supporting the board. There's clearly more votes that were cast against Mr. Keck and Ms. O'Brien.
Oh, he's talking about the first time.
Yeah, I think there would, my guess again would be there would be fewer votes if you're to say we don't support the board. I think there are people who voted against them who are in support of the board and in support of those individuals, but for a variety of reasons, they didn't want to vote them in for reasons that we discussed quite at length. So I think the vast majority.
I'm a little bit confused.
I'm confused as well.
I'd say the vast majority of people are in support of the board.
He's just talking about we're talking about the numbers on the vote itself.
Right. The previous vote was just, do you support the board? It wasn't.
Right, but that's what we're saying, 38 to 1.
Yeah.
Where there wasn't any flexibility on that vote. It was just or take it or leave it, right?
Right.
And this time around, at least there was, okay, we've got some flexibility here. And, as he's pointing out, there really wasn't, this is a more significant or historic kind of vote in the sense that there were more dissenters.
Yeah, and I would say what's really historic is we went into executive session for 45 minutes?
Hour and 15.
Hour and 15 minutes before the vote. That
Can you two agree on anything?
That had never happened before. That had never happened before. It had always been kind of a...
Yeah, that was a heated conversation and passionate conversation on both sides. Fair enough.
All right, so we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back after this.
If you're just joining us, this is a big match and a big moment as Clijsters toes the line.
John, Anderson has really been struggling out there today. Huge mistake as Clijsters clinches another title. Don't let your nutrition get in the way. USANA, the official multivitamin of the WTA.
Hey, we're back. Matt McCarthy at Rugby Wrap-Up at the Fantasy Sports Network, Studio 34, Rockin' Riley's, literally dashing Steve Lewis, who's going to have to dash out of here in seconds, and Michael Crafton. We're talking Congress. We're talking about the last assembly. We're waiting on Phaidra Knight's arrival. Steve, as the freshman congressman and a big proponent for significant change, were you happy, and what are any other thoughts that you want to throw out there before you leave?
Yeah, obviously I was personally disappointed in the results on those renominations. When you say wholesale change, no one's in favor of wholesale change. I just felt there should be incremental change, and that was personified in the renomination of Chad Keck. So it wasn't ever about burning the house down, but it's about being as good as we can be and getting the most effective board we can get for the betterment of American rugby. That's all I was about. the arguments made during the course of the Congress didn't sway me. I think RIM's performance is still abject. Not one new sponsor, not one successful event. There's a lot hinging on the success of the World Cup Sevens next year, and we want that to be successful. I bought tickets. Everybody wants it to be successful.
So if RIM is successful, does USA Rugby get more money from RIM?
Absolutely. That's the whole point of RIM. But the whole point of RIM, the evidence doesn't show that's happening. What have they done? Where's the beef? Where's the income? Where are the sponsors? Where are the successful events? What's happening? We keep getting told everything's fine, everything's hunky-dory, it'll be okay in 6 months.
And what about the Rugby Channel?
The Rugby Channel's is clearly a flawed concept. There'll be some news coming up on that which will prove how flawed it is. But you look at the subscriber base, look at the lack of content. It's flawed. There's no other word for it.
What are your thoughts on RIM and the Rugby Channel?
I think it's a wait-and-see approach, to be honest. Like Steve sort of said there, a lot hinges on the Rugby World Cup next summer. That's where they're expecting
where the San Francisco Giants play.
That's right. That's where they're expecting the financial tide to turn, so to speak. The Rugby Channel, like Steve said, has been more concerning purely from a financial viewpoint. So it remains to be seen what's going to happen there. I think there's a way that USA Rugby potentially could get out of that situation and actually come out ahead. But that remains to be seen. It's a huge question mark. I think the biggest question mark for me, looking at the financials of RIM that are available now, is the lack of sponsorship. And unless they're able to get something done in the next, I would say, quarter, I mean, it's going to be a really, really big issue and a big question mark, because then all the eggs are in the Rugby World Cup basket.
Right, but here's the thing. I mean, it was never the plan to wait 3 years until a successful Sevens World Cup. We've had 18 months of nothing.
With a startup, I think there was an idea that they would be running losses. I think the losses are quite higher than expected because of the lack of sponsors.
But here's a question I have, and correct me if I'm wrong. I thought that the RIM contract or arrangement with USA Rugby was that they would give them a certain amount of money every year, and I didn't think that had any correlation to how much RIM made.
Well, that's right. There's a license fee, so USA Rugby gets the license fee, and once RIM becomes profitable, the board of RIM can choose to issue dividends, which would be surplus money.
So key words there: once RIM becomes profitable, and the board can choose
to.
So if you're comfortable with that, it's a good thing. Clearly, more members of Congress were comfortable with it than I was, and a few others. And I don't believe there was any bad faith there or any issues with that. They believe it, so they're entitled to vote the way they want. I feel strongly the other way. I would love to be disappointed. I would love to be wrong in this issue, but I have severe doubts.
Because it's on paper, in other words, that they don't have to give more money if they are profitable, as long as they're just giving that agreed-to licensing fee.
True. I mean, if
that doesn't seem like a good deal. I'm clearly not a businessman.
If they ever liquidated, let's say, the Rugby Channel or sold it off entirely, then it goes back to your proportionate shares. So USA Rugby has 75%. So if they had $1 million in the bank and it was sold off or liquidated, they would get 75% of the assets.
That's correct. We've sold 25% of the crown jewels. Did we sell it for enough? That's the question.
We sold the crown jewels to the crown, in essence, to Mother England, didn't we?
Let's not get into politics. It's
that's a statement of fact. That is John Adams, the man responsible for this country, when we beat England back in 1776 for the first time, said facts are stubborn things. And that is a stubborn fact, that we did sell it back to Mother England.
Fair enough. I bow to your superior historical knowledge.
Thank you. Second president of the United States. Anyway. So going forward, what's going to happen with Congress? And if I get a Congress member on per week, per show, what are they going to tell me that they're doing?
Well, I would say right now Congress is working to put together this structure that we mentioned in the last segment. We need to figure out who the individuals will be that will be representing Congress. We're going to be working with the national office to get more Congress members on committees. The club is pretty good. I think it's really the...
As a member, can I see the minutes and the financials? And is there going to be any transparency from, say, okay, just the Congress meeting?
We will be publishing the minutes or notes, at least, from the Congress meeting. It's
What's
in
the
works
difference
right now.
between minutes and notes? And are actual minutes, verbatim minutes, taken at these things?
I would say...
I hope so. I hope they are verbatim, because then people know where people stand.
Well, is there a stenographer or somebody there, or how's it?
There were a couple of congresspersons taking notes.
And there were some national office folks that were doing the same. So
was it being recorded?
It was not being recorded.
So then it's no way in hell it can be verbatim.
Yeah, it's close. I've looked at the notes that have been prepared by folks in the national office to kind of prepare Congress's response, and they're pretty darn good.
So I mean, to cap off this topic, I mean, I like to say out of this last meeting there have been a lot of positive things that Congress will be doing, and that's in great measure due to public campaign and public discussion prior to this Congress meeting. If one thing that Congress can do now is hold the board's feet to the fire, which is definitely happening, their responses have definitely changed, and their attitude, certainly in that last meeting, I felt changed. They are more responsive. So finally, I feel Congress is achieving something, and it's in no small part due to the sort of public pressure put on by people like Tony Riddell and a significant portion of the rugby community that hasn't been happy with the board.
Yeah, and I think it's a process that's taken years, to be quite frank. The current board is much more receptive to listening to Congress, first off, and I think they've demonstrated that over the last couple of years. I think the kind of groundswell from the membership over the last year especially has helped them realize that there's a lot that they don't understand about our members.
You said it.
That's right. And Congress has worked hard for many years to try and make that happen, and I think it's been thanks to the membership and individuals that have really brought this to life.
All right, Steve, 30 seconds left. I just want to ask you, because for me it's a little confusing. Marnie Vath is on Congress, and she is the chair for the board nominating committee. So
Correct.
if I'm not mistaken, what happens is people apply to be on the board of directors of USA Rugby. It goes to this committee, the nominating committee. Marnie Vath is the chair of that committee. She's the lone representative from Congress. The other 4 people of that 5 are from the board of directors.
They're appointed by the board. They're not all board directors, but appointed by the board. So in their own likeness, one might say.
How many would be how many board members were part of that committee?
Just one other, Jeremiah Johnson.
And then the other 3 were whom?
Former international athlete.
Francis Villejean.
Right. And
Frank Merrill.
Frank Merrill was a former Congress member.
And one other.
Who was the one other, we know?
Can't remember off the top of my head.
Interesting, because that seems like it's a weird process.
It's a self-perpetuating oligarchy.
There's this idea that...
Self-perpetuating
oligarchy.
Says the Champagne's socialist, Steve Lewis, who is dashing and literally dashing out of here right now. The rugby James Bond, Stephen Lewis. No offense, Mark Griffin.
006.5.
Yeah. But we'll be right back after this. Safe travels, Stephen.
Thanks. Take care. See you, mate. See you.
So this is the 10th anniversary of the NYC Rugby Cup, which is hard to believe. It's come a long way. I think we've got over 60 teams here today, and they're all kitted out, representing different teams from across the country. We've always had a theme every year, and this is the culminating event for our partner programs and our community programs that work with us throughout the year to come and showcase their skills and their go-forward attitude as well. So it's super exciting to be celebrating the 10th anniversary. Thanks to AIG and Canterbury for supporting us, all the volunteers, all the sponsors, and especially the staff and volunteers. Some fantastic rugby, lots of sportsmanship. The kids still had a blast. And now, of course, now we've finished, the sun has come out. So that's the way it goes, I guess. Every day's a rugby day.
I'm Frank Horn, and you're watching Rugby Wrap-Up.
Hey everybody, Matt McCarthy at the Fantasy Sports Network, Studio 34 for Rugby Wrap-Up. Our producer has told us we're out of time, but we still have Phaidra Knight and Michael Crafton and George Hook for you, so please look for it. And with that, Matt McCarthy at Rockin' Riley's at the Fantasy Sports Network, Studio 34 in the Renaissance Hotel on West 35th Street in New York City for Rugby Wrap-Up, signing off.